Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Music. Today, I have a very special treat for you. Someone that I've been looking forward to talking to for quite some time. He's got some interesting music to share, music that has a social mission. Paul, the Cides, joins us right now.
Hey,
Hi,
Sean.
Paul.
Hey, Sean.
So, you have you're a very interesting character. Um, you live off the grid. You started your musical career at the age of 12. And I believe your father said that you couldn't sing. You've since proven him quite wrong on that front. Um, so I want to get a little bit of insight into your life, and because your story is just from your musical journey to your life journey. And we were just talking to that you're an anarchist, which I identify with as well. Um, so I want to understand how we went from 12-year-old you to today.
Well,
Is
I,
that broad enough?
yeah. And it's a great question, and for me, I think creativity and expression for everybody is a really important thing. And my father was a semi-professional singer. When my
Oh,
father
okay.
was singing, you couldn't tell the difference between him and Frank Sinatra. You wouldn't know who was who. But my father was so picky about singing perfection, and I wanted to sing, and I mimicked him, and he was saying, "No, you're singing sharp, you're singing flat, or you're late, you should be singing." And anyway, in the end, I thought, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm going to get a guitar because he can't play a guitar, and I'm going to play guitar, and that's how I'm going to express myself musically. And he can't criticize me, so that's why I picked up a guitar. And so that was a seminal moment in my life, definitely. And then coming on to answer your question further, um, I got involved in what you might call mainstream reality, um, in terms of getting a job, getting a mortgage. I had the good fortune to be married and have 3 kids, all wonderful things. And then through martial arts, actually, I discovered Buddhism.
Okay.
And having discovered Buddhism, um, it just pressed the reset button on my value system. And I don't know if you've ever heard or seen of a book by a bloke called Jack Cornfield, which is called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. And it's just beautiful because it says you get to that point where you start to question the whole of your life and what your values were, which for me were actually quite a bit off center. And how do you deal with that awakening? Um, and so I'm not a Buddhist. I'm as an anarchist, I don't believe in any gods, no masters, no religions. I don't. But Buddhism, along with what I call roots Christianity before the Roman Church got hold of Christianity, there are some fantastic teachings.
And they've done some great things with it, by the way,
Oh, yeah.
the Roman Church.
Yeah. And so, and for me, was a complete change. And as a result, discovering some Buddhist values and some what I call roots Christianity values, I looked at my whole career, my life, and the relationship I was in at the time with my then wife and my kids, and thought, how did I get here? Reminds me of the Talking Heads song, Same as It Ever Was. How did I get here? You know? So that's what happened for me. And that was a huge wake up. And then when I started to question my own values and where I was going in life, and then similarly questioned asked those questions of my wife and my kids. And I could see that I was actually going down a completely different route, that my journey was completely somewhere else, which was out of this mainstream capitalist society.
Uh-huh.
Capitalism. I was very clever with software engineering for a while, and I worked for American Express, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, doing software engineering. But my soul wasn't in it. I wanted to get out. My view of capitalism is people make money, sadly, off the backs of other people's misery. And that
Oh yeah.
is, you know,
Yeah, it's
so that,
exploitation
yeah.
at its
So,
finest. Yeah.
so I would say playing the guitar gave me my creative juices, my creative outflow without the criticism of my parents. And then discovering Buddhism and enabled me to look at a different way of looking at life, question my values. So I'm eternally grateful for those two things. And yeah.
And it's a lot of the people that are in the music industry or the entertainment industry in particular. Um, I don't want to say that the majority of them don't have a social impact, a mission behind them, but it's unusual to have a social mission and an impact statement such as what you have. I find that very interesting, and I applaud you for that. And I think that probably goes to that anarchist roots, right? That Buddhism root, that giving back, that level of creativity, it being sort of a gift that you want to share. Um, how and I can imagine too that music labels, the business side of the music industry, probably not too keen on the social impact part of it because I mean they're more focused on profits. So how has that journey been for you, making your music such a integral part of change?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And, for me, I think I have to start off with me, because I'm playing punk. Um, and what is the definition of punk? And then just before I come on to what is my definition of punk, I'd like to say that one of my great spiritual influences, um, because I love meditation as a practice, and he said, correct meditation is the allowance of everything.
Okay.
You know, there's no particular route. You to get the
Right.
monkeys to come in, and you're trying to find, and you might know the difference between nothing and no thing. Um, but correct meditation is the allowance of everything. You say, thank you for that thought, goodbye. Thank you for that thought, goodbye. And for me, punk, and with me and the Cides, we don't want to be genreized. Like, when we started to replay music again, and people will say, well, are you indie rock, indie punk? Are you, progressive rock? Are you contemporary rock? Are you punk? Are you new wave? And I say, hey, I feel I have a gift of writing songs. And that gift for me is about love and social injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the important thing is to get my messages out there, that I want to be out there. And coming back to punk, so a lot of people say, well, hey, what's your definition of punk? Because a lot of people have a lot of different definitions of punk, but it's not about a fashion statement. It's not like a clothes style. And I go back to CBGBs. Do you remember CBGBs?
I do.
And the people who turned up there were just playing as they felt to be played, without any restraints, and that included the Ramones, included Blondie, and many others, Velvet Underground. But then what was really interesting for me was, over here in the UK at the same time as CBGs was coming from a grassroots place where creativity could be fertilized in a beautiful space. We had the Hope and Anchor in North London in Islington. But then what happened was the punk movement in the UK, um, probably manifested by the Sex Pistols and the Clash. But they said, we're going to take that energy, but we're not just going to take the energy of it, we're going to politicize it as well. So, whereas, I love the Ramones. Sheena is a punk rocker. Fantastic. But what is the message in there? And then what happened is the people like the Sex Pistols, the Clash, they took that energy and then they wrote songs like Anarchy in the UK, I'm an Anarchist, God Save the Queen and the Fascist Regime. And that was really, fertile stuff for me. And then what seemed to happen is after like 18 months of the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Stranglers, the Jam, who were adding a political emphasis to that energy, that sort of went back across the Atlantic and started now to be reintegrated into some of the US punk bands.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect definition of punk, too, because punk is the ultimate screw you to the establishment. It's
It is. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's about breaking out from labels. It's about just kind of being free and out there in a way that you don't see in
Yes.
other genres.
For me, when people say, like, we put out some side stuff, and some people say, oh, that's not punk. Maybe we don't look punk. Maybe we haven't got the right metallic drum sound. But I say, hey, punk is about passionate expression of social injustice, wherever that's coming from. Or it could be heartache. But the two
Right.
ingredients of punk for me that make punk are anger with passion about an injustice. And that for me is the definition of punk. It's not clothes, it's not fashion, it's not how metallic drum sounds or it's passion, passionate anger about injustice and heartfelt things. That is punk.
Now, before the Cides, you were with a group called the Molesters, which
Yeah.
also had a very similar approach to social injustice. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Molesters?
Yeah. So the Molesters came about. I was living in Brighton in the south of the UK. And we were playing, I was playing in a group, probably playing funk and just enjoying music in general. It's a really rich period. 1975, 76, you had Weather Report pushing the boundaries of jazz. You had you had people like the Jam just starting to appear, and when I heard the Sex Pistols, when I heard the Ramones, I heard Joy Division. I just felt okay. So I've loved playing music, but hey, it's been like a spiritual awakening in music. And I want to get on with that. I want to get engaged with that. And so that's why with the Molesters, we're very much about, there's a lot of youth unemployment at the time. I personally was living with a band in a squat, which is a building, had an old hotel that hadn't been lived in for 20 years. Apartheid was still rife in South Africa. So we were writing songs about Steve Biko and Nelson Mandela. And we basically, we were fundraising for Palestine. So we were members, and I still am, of the Palestinian Support Organization.
Yeah. Speaking of apartheid,
that doesn't make me anti-Semitic, because I have
right.
absolutely no issue with the Jewish people. In fact, I have family connection with Jewish people, but I have issues with Jewish government policy and the illegal occupation of the
That's fine.
Palestinian territories. And I really think that's sad, is that by me and the United Nations two laws that say that the occupation is illegal, if I support United Nations laws, does that make me anti-Semitic? I think that's really sad. But anyway, so the Molesters was we were a very political punk band back in the day, and that's why we attracted the attention of John Peel. I don't know if you know of John Peel, who was a radio producer for the BBC. Um, he would play everything on Radio 4. We had John Peel sessions, and then we got a recording contract with a little recording company. But that was the Molesters, and we signed. We were signed at the same time. The Cure, if you're aware of the Cure,
Yes.
a UK label, was signed by us with the same little independent record label. Patrick Fitzgerald, who was a political poet at the time, and so the Molesters. I loved it. We lived in a full transit van for 18 months, going up and down the UK, Manchester, Liverpool, the Cavern, the coldest place in the earth where the Beatles played. We'd have to go into a laundrette, me and the drummer and the bass player, go to a laundrette and just sit there with our hands in front of the dryer before we played a gig because it was too cold. But that was punk, and we really believed in what we were doing. We really believed in the messages we're putting out there. That gave us that energy. And then from the Molesters, I went quiet because, as I say, I got married, had a fantastic wife, fantastic kids. We split up, but then it became apparent to me that the issues that the Molesters were playing music about and really passionately and with anger delivering in concert, there is so much more today that is untoward, that is really unhelpful. Basic loss of freedom, and that's what me, with my younger son Jack, who is the drummer. Jack is now 26, bass player is 27, Joe. But they said, well, we're young and we're angry too. We're angry about 0-hour contracts for jobs. We're angry that we have to be vaccinated to keep our jobs. And these are much, for me, bigger causes. So I thought, okay, this is time to get the guitars out of the cupboard and start writing again and start writing political stuff. And even though the BBC played a couple of songs, because the BBC know me personally, because of the John Peel sessions on Radio 4, the Kid Jensen sessions on Radio 1. But now when I start to play this new stuff, the BBC just shows how politically coloured it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did find out that actually Bill Gates is quite a heavy sponsor of the BBC. And so in one of our songs, I mentioned the GBC, and that's called the Gates Broadcasting Corporation, because, and it's called, that song is called Out of My Head, and it talks about, it says, fuck the GBC, because the GBC just control and manipulate all the media. And it brings to mind a guy called Goebbels, who was Hitler's
propaganda
department. And he's quoted as saying, give me control of the media and I will turn the nation into a herd of obedient pigs. And that's what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, it's happening here in the United States too. The corporate control of the media, the narratives that are carefully crafted, and and that's where I think music, in particular, has a history of being provocative and of being the tool for change. I mean, I guess the most classic example would be Woodstock, but individual artists from across the genres have risen up to a point where they've used their music to incite real social change, because music is a language. I've often said that music is the language of social change. It's
Yeah.
the, the unspoken voice of dissent in many ways. And we really are seeing, I mean, even before the pandemic hit, we were seeing a world in turmoil unlike anything that we've seen before. And young people in particular are getting wise to this. I mean, the majority of young people oppose capitalism. They've seen what it does. They oppose the political system that we have throughout the world. Um, because again, talk about corporate control. They've taken control of the governments too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we talked earlier too. Before I get to that, I found it fascinating that you had a chance to sign with a bigger label, and you chose no. You chose to go with an independent label.
That's right. Yeah.
That speaks, I think, to the genuineness of what you're trying to accomplish. Um, but I mean, that must have been a very difficult decision.
Yeah, it was. So basically, the Molesters got offered a deal from Spy Records, which was the record company set up by John Cale from Velvet Underground. And of course, I mean, I love Velvet Underground. I love Lou Reed. But the deal was, it was like they, Spy Records, John Cale's record label gets 98%, and we get 2%. Um,
Um,
and and there was anyway, it was such a corporate deal, and I couldn't believe actually how because I love Velvet Underground, but I couldn't believe how John Cale's label called Spy Records, how corporate it was. And we just looked at it and we thought, well, wow, this is a fantastic endorsement to get John Cale to sign us. And he had Squeeze, and a UK band at the time, who were pretty well known. I don't know if you remember Squeeze,
I don't know.
but they were quite a big band in the UK. And we thought, wow, and we're going to be the next signing. But then we just looked more and more at the contract and thought, we're being screwed down here. So we went with a little record label called Small Wonder and had a much more intimate relationship. They were signing political bands, political acts, not just signing people for um, profit revenue margins, but they were signing them because they felt resonance with the messages of the songs. And coming back to what you said earlier on, what's so important for me is songs, music is a wonderful way of raising awareness in people. And I'm doing this dance at the moment where I want to put some stuff out there that is blatantly obvious in people's faces, and they might take offense and just turn it off after 30 seconds. And then at the other end of that spectrum, if 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 Joe Smith on the street hears one of my songs and starts tapping his foot or her foot to it, and then they hear this chorus and they start, oh, that's really catchy, I like that, and they start singing the chorus, and then they say, yeah, it's a really nice chorus, that, and I get that, I groove to that, and they say, what's he saying in the verse? He's saying, what is he saying? A shot in the arm is, not what nature intended. A chip in the brain is not what nature intended. Oh, what's that about? But
Yeah.
for me, my main mission, because I feel like if I have a songwriting talent, is to get my messages out there, to wake people up to their re-empowerment. And if that means I have to prostitute myself to a certain extent by keeping the choruses and some of the lyrics politically correct,
Yeah.
Then I'll do that for the sake of getting the broader message out there, and maybe just lighting the touch paper of a little bit of awareness. So somebody, for example, in one of the songs, Out of My Head, there's a really groovy beat in it. It really pounds away. And lots of people don't listen to it, but don't hear the lyrics to start with, but they're just grooving to the start of the bass and the drums. And then all of a sudden they're joining in.
That does happen.
And they say, hey, what's he singing about with that? What's he singing about that verse? A chip in the brain is not what nature intended, And then playing Russian roulette with Pfizer and Monsanto and, so that's, for me music is a fantastic way of offering an invitation to people to look at things in a different way. And that's what I feel my mission is.
I don't have that. I'm trying to look and see what we have queued up for the playlist. I don't think I have that song. What I want to, I have no idea what order these songs have been played, but one that I guess we should start with, "Forgive and Forget at Christmas."
Yeah.
Given the time, let's get a taste of that. Let's go ahead and play that, and then come back and we'll analyze that some more.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve, I can't believe you're standing at my door. I want to say I hate you, but my anger turns to joy. Some tide took you out, now you've drifted back in. Your heartbreak games, your thoughtless ways, your disappearing act. You took me down to the darkest of places, but somehow I got back. Some tide took you out, now you've drifted back in. Done my time feeling bitter and twisted. It's time for forgiveness. Forgive and forget at Christmas. You'd better come in, you're so to the skin. You look like something my cat brought in. No need to explain your wandering ways. I found my compass, found my way. No need for your words, just gently hold me close. I've done my time feeling bitter and twisted. It's time for forgiveness. Forgive and forget at Christmas. Leave our sorrows far behind us. It's time for kindness. Forgive and forget at Christmas. The snow in the sun, tomorrow you'll be gone. I've done my time feeling bitter and twisted. It's time for forgiveness. Forgive and forget at Christmas. Leave our sorrows far behind us. It's time for kindness. Forgive and forget at Christmas. Forgive and
think, let me guess, I think the message of that song is about forgiving and forgetting at Christmas.
Yeah.
And in
If
all seriousness, that is, forgiveness is a very difficult thing for people to do. I mean, I think I, it's become a human thing to kind of hold on to these grudges and to assign blame and to. There's a lot of self-reflection that's required for forgiveness as well. I mean, you have to start with forgiving yourself, which I think is why a lot of people have such a hard time forgiving others. What makes Christmas, do you think, a time when people are more attuned to the idea of forgiveness?
that's a great question, John. So, if I'll just explain a little bit about where this song came from. So, I was with my son Jack, the drummer, and we were in Copenhagen with a friend recording some other rock tracks. We were sat down in a beer. This is probably first week in December in Copenhagen, and they start bringing out a seasonal brew. It only comes out at Christmas from the breweries in Copenhagen, and it's really lovely beer. They only brew it for 6 weeks, so we're sitting down enjoying that, and then all of a sudden comes on this canned music playlist of typical Christmas songs.
Yeah.
And I said to Jack and the guys we're with from the studio, I said, "Oh, fucking hell, here we go again. All this Christmas bullshit songs." And my Jack, my son, said, "Hey, Dad, yeah, but you couldn't write a Christmas song." So, so I said, "Okay, I bet you beers for the rest of the week, Jack. I'm going to go and write a Christmas song now." And I finished my beer, went back to the hotel, and I wrote this song called "Forgive and Forget." And it took me 8 hours. And then we're back in the studio in the morning, and we dropped everything else and recorded "Forgive and Forget."
Wow.
And initially, that song was about how I had mistreated a really beautiful woman about just disappearing off, and I was actually mirroring this thing about how I disappeared off and turned up, and so that was how the track got started. But then, as the track it started to get quite popular, and a lot of people were saying, "Do you know what? It sounds a bit like Paul McCartney and Mull of Kintyre." And then when we got the choir involved, the kids' choir, it came quite a bigger thing. So I'd written this thing about "Forgive and Forget," which was about my personal relationship dysfunctionality and my the hurt that I caused somebody else, which I deeply regret. And then I thought about the whole thing of forgiveness, which you touched on a bit earlier, and then just by chance I came across a news story about some North American Indians, an indigenous population, who'd had a lot of children who were previously, if you like, pagan. They were not. They'd been converted to Christianity, and then, without exception, I think all of the children in this small community had been abused by a priest and his assistant, anyway, it deeply affected me, and especially because in my own family, I found out to my discomfort there have been some occurrences of abuse, and I just didn't realize how prevalent how abuse is.
Yeah.
I used to think it would happen in like 1 in 1,000 families, but when this happened, it's much more prevalent than it is. And then the other thing that I found that was really disconcerting was it was published in France, where I spend a lot of time, last year, that there were 300,000 cases acknowledged of child abuse by the Catholic Church. But how can the Pope just say, I forgive the perpetrators of that injustice, that crime, and so now it's all right? And of course, they can't do that. Only the abused, only the victim has the power to forgive, as and when they're ready. And so what happened with Forgive and Forget, the song, which is lovely, lovely, beautiful, lum-de-dum-de-dum, Paul McCartney, Muller Kintyre, but the video that goes with that, which was only released 2 days ago, it shows an undercurrent of when Forgive and Forget is absolutely appropriate and a healthy thing to do. But when there are some things that, that you forgiving and forgetting means swept under the carpet, and that can't be the case.
Yeah.
So that's, and so with Forgive and Forget, we partner with an organization called Havoca, which is helping adult victims of child abuse. And they get 50% of whatever revenues we get from this track. And they're a fantastic organization helping adult people who have suffered abuse and feel that they have not been acknowledged, recognized, which is all they want. And unfortunately, a lot of them are suicidal. And so that's where Forgive and Forget. And it's the only song from the Cides where there is the message in the song doesn't at all reflect the message in the video, which is the one that I put across. So all our songs, when people may want to make videos for us, we're very lucky to have a couple of organizations of students who are doing film, and they want to make videos for us as the band, and they use the storyboard as the lyrics of the song. And they're very strong lyrics. But with Forgive and Forget, it's a very haunting and very subtle message delivery mechanism. And when you hear the song, you think, oh, it's a lovely Christmas song. It could be the Pogues, it could be Muller Kintyre. But when you watch the video with the song and the twists in this family situation, then you begin to realize that there's a shadow side of this that's bringing in something else. So that for me is an excellent example of trying to leverage the music and the earworm, but people to look at the video and actually see, well, what's going on here,
And is this a single that people can buy, or is it part of an album? Because I know that, again, there's that charitable aspect to it.
Yeah. So this is difficult. There's a website called Bandcamp.
Okay, familiar with that.
Are you familiar with them?
I am. Yep.
So for the first year of the Cides, we were partnering with Bandcamp, where you can put your singles up and invite people. You can invite people to pay a minimum price or just a donation according to how they feel for the music, and then we get the money from your music. Unfortunately, Bandcamp about a year ago got taken over by another corporation, and very sadly, the only way you can financially interact with them is through PayPal.
Oh, geez.
I had a very unpleasant experience when the Cides, we were playing and raising money for the Canadian truck drivers, the Freedom truck drivers.
Oh, right.
And so we got we got nearly €2,000, £2,000, and we wanted to donate it to the Canadian truckers, who were saying, freedom of choice between being vaccinated and not. And lo and behold, PayPal says to us, no, you can't pay it. We're declining you paying And I thought, what the fuck?
Yep.
So we've been raising money for freedom of choice by the Canadian truck drivers, and now PayPal are saying no, we're declining your payment. You can't pay them, which is for me is it's fascism. It's
Oh, absolutely.
it's telling me how I can spend my money. So then I wrote to Bandcamp and said, hey, I love your service, love your website, I love what you're doing for independent artists, but please, can we find another transactional channel for money than PayPal? And they said, sorry, no. So now the Cides has had to say to Bandcamp, been a great relationship, but unless you give us another way of avoiding a fascist payment regime, we can't do anything. So if anybody
Yeah.
wants to find anything from us, go to www.thecides.com,
You know,
our website.
PayPal not only engaged in that, but if I recall, they also locked people out of their accounts. They basically stole money from several of the truckers that had PayPal accounts. Um, the Canadian government moved to actually seize bank accounts of the protesters.
Yeah,
And what this has led to now is a much bigger movement where payment processors from across the spectrum, I mean, including the credit card companies themselves, are now imposing their morals on everyone else, determining, no, you can't, we're not going to allow this organization to raise money because we don't agree with the cause. We're not going to allow you to send money to this person.
yeah,
That really is, and this is where, I go back to the anarchy thing. Um, people are always worried about fascism, especially in the United States. We heard about Donald Trump and oh, that's going to be a fascist regime and blah 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 blah. But fascism, it's already here,
yeah,
and people are just not seeing it.
yeah,
And I have to be very careful when I use the word anarchy, because a lot of people have, and we talked about this before the show, have this definition of anarchy as being this violent, free for
oh,
all.
yeah,
And I want you to explain anarchy the way you explained it to me before the show, because I thought that was just brilliant.
yeah. So anarchy is the opposite of hierarchy, and for me, anarchy. And one of our songs is called Black Flag, which is the United symbol. Black flag that says that the tricolour or the stars and stripes or the Union Jack are divisive for people, put you in a congregation. But anarchy says, hey, we can organize ourselves in our communities. In our immediate communities, we can decide our own values, we can decide our own rules, we can decide our own punishments for people who break the rules, but we don't need an archy, a queen, a monarchy, or a king. We don't need an oligarchy like Macron in France. We don't need a hierarchy, somebody higher than us to tell us from somewhere in a position of their perceived power to tell us how our communities should work. We in our communities should have the right to decide our values, our policing, our systems of policing ourselves are put in place. That is anarchy. And unfortunately, anarchy has got a bad name because
Yes.
the state fears it. And in the same way, for example, I use the example, the expression decimated. So if I was to say to you, Sean, what does decimated mean? What would you say?
Well, it means to. I think what you're getting at is it means to destroy, to utterly obliterate something or someone.
And that is a beautiful example of how anarchy has been bad named. because decimated comes from the Roman terms, which is when the occupying colonial Roman forces were in Europe. If they felt they'd been betrayed or not supported, they would take 1 in every 10 men and kill them. Deci is 10. So it would be 1 in 10 would be executed for punishment. But it doesn't mean obliterated. It doesn't mean, it's another twist by Wikipedia and the likes of what is the definition of a term. Decimated means 1 in 10 was taken out. It doesn't mean nearly obliterated. But this is how people like Bill Gates, who control Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, they're all controlled by State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, Bill Gates, the same family. So,
and a lot of people know, or they know of Bill Gates. BlackRock, though, that's a nefarious little entity that has global control that very few people are familiar with, which to me is just utterly shocking.
Yeah. 3 corporations own every corporation in the world, through the media. And and for me, I mean, coming back to the example of Goebbels, the propaganda minister for Nazi Germany, for Hitler, who said, give me control of the media and I will turn the nation into a state of obedient pigs. And because people are so engaged with the media, because people today are just so glued to their mobile phone or a screen.
And that's by design.
Yeah, and that's by design. I don't have a mobile phone. I use the internet when I can. I definitely don't have a mobile phone. And people say, well, you haven't got a mobile phone, so how can you be in touch with the news? And I say, well, what is the news? And so for me, reality is what I see with my eyes, hear with my ears, and feel in my heart. That is reality. It's not something that's written on the Wall Street Journal. It's not something that's on, the Guardian newspaper.
Well, now you're being Saint-Croissant. The Wall Street Journal? That's not news?
Well, but it's like there's a friend of mine who has got an elderly person who had enormous problems, health problems after their second jab, coincidental or not. But this guy, you walk into his house and I'm sorting out because he's got a problem with his lighting. And I used to be an electrician in a previous life. So I go in and sort out this problem. But he's got the news channel just playing all the time on a huge screen, the news channel. And this is what you should be afraid of. This is what you need to be fear. This is the problem. This is what is awful. But if you obey and follow us, we'll give you a way out. But and as I say in one of my songs, tighten the fear, up the control. The more increase the fear and then make people be afraid and then offer them a way out, providing they obey and comply. So.
That actually is a perfect lead-in to Black Flag.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and give that a listen, because it's a perfect tie-in.
Right! I've had enough of these government fuckers!
Me too!
No surrender! We're taking back control. We've got fire in the soul. We're taking back control. Lock yourself away and throw away the key. No questions, just the blame. Freedom's a thing of yesterday. They turn up the fear, they tighten control. Government gates and the media show, testing us how far they can go. The shit will take before we say no. It's all gonna break before we can make it better. a black flag. We need a black flag. Let us always divided us all as one people. No religion, no state, so we'll not see the hate among people. Break out a black flag. We need a black flag. Break out a black flag. Shout black flag, black, no surrender. Shout black flag, black. We need a black flag. Break out a black flag. Tear down these walls, dividing us all as one people. No religion, no state, so we don't into hate among people. Break out a black flag, back control, we can fight. We need a black flag, back control, we're taking back control. Tear down these walls, dividing us all as one people. No religion, no state, so we don't into hate among people. Break out a black flag, back control, we can fight. We need a black flag, back control, we're taking back control. We're taking back control.
That, can you explain the black flag one more time?
Yeah, sure. So the anarchist movement, they see a Union Jack or a Stars and Stripes or a tricolour as divisive of people. It means it's categorizing people into a particular denomination.
Yeah.
So the anarchists globally march with a black flag. So from all over, United States, from Great Britain, Scotland, Wales, Germany, Italy, Ecuador, Costa Rica, when the anarchists march, they march with a black flag. And that's to show no borders, no division, no patriotism. And that's the black flag. It's the symbol of solidarity. And the black flag means we recognize the value of the community to make its own decisions, have its own values, and be itself without intervention from something that considers itself higher. So the black flag is about community.
And people will say, that's unrealistic. You can't have that. And I love to, my classic example when people say that is always to go back to the hunter-gatherer societies.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, look at the wars. People don't go to war. Governments go to war.
Exactly.
And so many of these wars and these conflicts, I mean, first of all, they're just so senseless and ridiculous. I've never understood the idea of, like, I'm mad at you, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab a bunch of people and come and kill a bunch of your people, and whoever kills the most people, they win.
Yeah. It's actually, Sean, it's actually worse than that, because I mean, I can go right back to the Knights Templars Crusades, but yeah, that's maybe going to be a little bit of a long journey. But to give you some recent examples, in the Napoleonic Wars, so in the late 1700s, England, the Duke of Wellington, King George, was fighting Napoleon. And interestingly, there was one company who was financing both. Wars are expensive things to conduct.
Yeah.
And in the Napoleonic Wars, you had the same family, the Rothschilds, were financing Wellington and financing Napoleon to fight each other. the same bank, because they know they don't give a shit who wins or who loses. They're making a loan, and they're going to get interest on that loan to give them, Napoleon and Wellington, King George, the material, the money to buy arms, gunpowder, rifles, pay men. And they don't give a fuck who wins. They just know that they're going to get a big return on their money. And so I angst for many years, for example, over in the Second World War and the building of the concentration camps. The financier of Hitler was Rothschilds, and Rothschilds claims to be an Ashkenazi Jew. And that, I discovered a lot more after investigating that, but initially I thought, well, the Jews are a very tight-knit community and self-respecting of their brothers and sisters. So how can a Jew be lending money to Hitler to finance these gas chambers? And even worse, how did IBM...
I was just going to mention IBM.
Who invented the first computerized national insurance stamp, for employees in the States. How were they allowed to sell their technology to carry out the consensus to find out everything about Jews, where their mothers and fathers were born, where they lived? I mean, how did all that happen?
And make it more efficient.
Yeah.
IBM made it more efficient.
Yeah, the genocide against the Jews couldn't have happened without IBM.
IBM, exactly. Yep.
So,
and people don't know this even today. People. I'll mention IBM to people. I'm like, what? No, they couldn't have been involved in the Holocaust. What are you talking about? No, they were integral to the Holocaust, and to my knowledge, they've not even apologized for their.
And I can't remember, Sean, who it is, but there was one American actor. And he actually took it on himself and said, "Hey, this shit needs to come out." And he was starting to source the finance to make a film about it, but then he got shut down. And I can't remember who it was. But
I'll look into that.
Yeah. If you look at the film about IBM, and it was someone really famous. I don't know, one of the guys from Jason Bourne, but one of those really up there guys, and he discovered this, and he felt so enraged about it, and he decided to try and finance himself to bring out a film called IBM and the War, because at the time the United States had banned the sale of any technology to Germany, but IBM somehow it was able to do that.
Yeah, and they escaped all liability.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, on that happy note.
Yeah.
Running out of time here a bit. I want to play 2 other songs. I want to play This Being Human.
This Being Human.
This Being Human.
Yeah.
Let's give that a listen.
Fuck it. Money rapes the earth, makes us slaves. We're slaves from birth. Disconnects us from our true nature. If we don't reconnect, we're going out, going down. A species on its way out. On its way out. A chip in the brain, it's not what nature intended. We go down that road, this being human is ended. We're going down. We're going out. They can take away your home, everything you own, but they can't take away this being human. Love will shine the way, the battle's had its day. They can't take away love, this being human. Reject the great thought, it's not what nature intended. And when man plays God, this being human is ended. We're going down, going out. They can take away your home, everything you own, but they can't take away this being human. Love will shine the way, the cabal has had its day. They can't take away love, this being human. Reject the great reset. We need a nature reconnect. Reject the great reset. We need a nature reconnect. Take away your home, everything you own, but they can't take away this being human. Love will shine the way, the cabal has had its day. They can't take away love, this being human. Reject the great reset. We need a nature reconnect. Reject the great reset. We need a nature reconnect.
You know, I think my favorite part of that song is we need a nature reconnect.
Yeah.
We need to reconnect with nature. Well, even more than that, people in this hierarchy that we have as a society, humans have taken themselves out of nature. We've become, we dominate nature, and we don't see ourselves as part of it. And you see this with the climate change, the extinction of species that is occurring, the poisoning and of the genome. Um, we need to stop this idea that we are somehow separate from nature. And so I love that whole concept of we need to reconnect. We need to reconnect with nature. And that's essentially what being a human is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's being a part of the natural world. We are a product of the natural world. We're not the owners of it. We're not the, we may dominate it, but we're certainly not meant to be lords over nature. And that's
Yeah.
what we've done. And so much of that has been, we're destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I love most about that particular line. We need to reconnect with nature. And also the idea of, and I guess, and this goes back to the whole idea of capitalism in a sense, is the whole idea of ownership. You don't really own anything. Other people own it.
Yeah.
You talk about they can take your home. They can take most anything from you, but what they can't take, although they certainly try, is your humanity.
Yeah.
But that's where the propaganda comes in. The propaganda tries to co-opt people's humanity in a very destructive way. Where did you get the inspiration to write the song, and how long did this take you to compose?
This was a short one, Sean. But basically, I wrote this song when I held about the World Economic Forum and their meetings in Davos. I don't know how familiar you are with the World Economic Forum. And
Unfortunately, too.
Schwab. So a lot of people think, oh yeah, Great Reset, because they talk about the Great Reset. And and what a wonderful idea it is, and it's based on, you know, climate respect, and it's based on humanity, but in fact it can't be, it's further from the truth.
Yeah.
So one of the you know, one of the missions or the missives of the World Economic Forum is a GBDC, a global bank digital currency. But it's all about so the World Economic Forum, they advocate that we have one digital currency for the whole world. They want to get rid of the dollar, the euro, the pound, the lira, whatever. There's going to be one currency for the world, which, okay, that might be good, it might be bad. But the problem with it is every cent of it is going to be programmable. And coming back to what I said earlier about how the Cides raised money for the Canadian truckies
And PayPal.
Envoy, and PayPal declined our payment to them. But what will happen now is combined with your social pass and your vaccine pass, you will be able to make payments or go to a festival according to your social credit pass. And that's the thing that's already happening here in Europe. You know, to take it to where it's going next, for the Canadian truck drivers, if they next year make a manifestation, want to go to Montreal or wherever to demonstrate, before they can fuel up their trucks with their credit card, they'll have to present their social credit card. And if they haven't got the points, they haven't been fully vaccinated, if they've challenged the government or spread fake news, their credit system, their social score will be diminished. So they won't even be allowed to put their credit card in to buy fuel until they've been presented and given a green light with their social credit score. And this is where we're going. And sadly, you know, it's been in China for a long time.
Yeah, I was just going to mention China.
It's being prototyped now in Sweden.
Oh, no. Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. But basically, what happens with the central bank digital currencies, every cent that you've got, you will need permission. You know, I mean, it's like even now with credit cards, debit cards. If you want to make a purchase, it's your money, it's there. But before you can access it or transact it, you've got to put a code in. And so we're now really close to a piece of software in the middle which says, well, hang on, have you been a good citizen? Have you challenged the government? Are you fully vaccinated? Oh, well, you can't access your funds. And that's where it's going.
1984.
Yeah. And something I love about where I am, living in the mountains and off-grid and autonomy, is I got a lot of wood for stoves, for heating, and I'll swap 5 cubic meters of heating wood, and then my neighbor gives me 10 legs of lamb, a side of beef, and nobody has any say, you know. And that's a beautiful way to go, the bartering system, or, you know, somebody to come and do some carpentry for me that I want doing, and I'll give them firewood for heating. But I really do think this is why we need to go back to some basic humanities.
Yeah.
And this thing called money, you know, and as I said in This Being Human, that the opening line is, money rapes the earth and makes us slaves from birth.
Yeah, it really does.
So I'm really passionate about that. And it's like, you know, I have some qualities to give and some offers and resources. You have qualities and resources to give. Let's exchange those, brother to brother, brother to sister, sister to sister.
It's how humans survived for more
Yeah.
than 99% of the time that we've existed.
Yeah,
This whole civilization and concept thing doesn't even represent 1%
exactly.
of humankind.
And that's what so many people fail to appreciate. I think we've got to go back to the horse and cart. 120 years ago, we reached what was called peak horse. So pig horse was where for every 5 people, like every family, there was a horse integral to transport or ploughing the fields, growing food. There was a horse. And then all of a sudden we got this industrialization and it all went out the fucking window. But we've got to get back to that. There is no such thing as mass sustainable energy, mass sustainable transport. There's no such thing as agriculture, masses. You know, mass agriculture means pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, genetically modified. It's not what nature intended. And fuck, we've got to get back to nature.
Yeah. Absolutely. We are out of time. And I hope you'll come back because there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about.
Sean. I feel like I'm talking with a brother.
Yes, me too. It's hard to find people too that identify with the anarchy and that understand that whole purpose, that whole mission, the whole need. And I wouldn't even say it's a choice at this point to reconnect with nature and to go back to simpler times. It's going to be thrust upon us. The only difference is it going to be thrust upon us by a fascist regime, kind of as an end of days, or are we going to transition to it in a way that is more harmonious with nature? And unfortunately, it looks like we're leading towards the fascism end. And hopefully, this is where people like yourself, through your music, this is a message that needs to be delivered badly. So I want to go ahead and the Cides.com. That's THECIDES.com. Please go. And again, half of the proceeds go to charity for Forgive and Forget. So again, please check that out. Where else can people find you? They can find you on, I assume, iTunes and Apple Music.
Yeah, Sean. I mean, I am so much of our stuff has been banned by Google and Facebook. We've been struck off and told we're politically incorrect. We've been told we're spreading fake news, and
it's music.
And it's music, but it's they strike us off, and it's like I'm in this difficult place where I want to get my messages out, but the distribution is Facebook, Google. And they come back and they say, we've declined your advert. We've declined this, declined that. You can't do that. You can't do that. So I'm really at the moment in a place, I feel like I need to leverage this bureaucratic, Hippocratic, dictatorial, fascist platform of social distribution. But we're going to move to a place where we're going to have our own website and we're going to just communicate by emails. And if people... RiseUp.net, which is an email system that I use, seems to be the only one that doesn't sanction me, doesn't criticize me, doesn't cut me down. But we are very soon going to get into the Chinese intranet, not the internet. It'll be an intranet. So it'll be like China, where you can use the internet, but only within the parameters the government says that you can use it. And if you query a certain topic, like for example, the mass psychology of psychism, the mass psychology of fascism by Wilhelm Reich, a great topic for me. You won't be able to find that. If you go to, want to find out about Noam Chomsky and the justification of anarchy and community, you won't be able to find that. And that's where we're heading, unfortunately. So, we're in a place where we've either got to take back power of control over the internet, or we've got to accept we're just going to get an intranet like China, where you're free to Google and search anything within a set of control parameters.
And again, I'll go back to the novel 1984.
Yeah, George Orwell. Yeah, he got it all. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great.
Hey, sure.
And we'll definitely have you back.
Give us a hug, man.
we're going to go ahead and close out with Red Light Situation.
Love you, Sean.
Profiles and music. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
COVID version X. Guess what's coming next? Oh yeah. Get a life, get a death, get out of the cage. While still got a breath, get out. Anything's better than life in a cage. Get a life, get a death, but fuck, get out of the cage. It's a red light situation. We gotta fight for liberation. A life, a death, with your last breath. Get a life, get a death, but fuck, get out of the cage. You got took for a ride, undercover of COVID. Sold a fistful of lies, undercover of COVID. Your freedom denied, undercover of COVID. Now the people gotta rise from the shadow of COVID. Get a life, get a death, get out of the cage. While still got a breath, get out. Anything's better than life in a cage. Get a life, get a death, but fuck, get out of the cage. It's a red light situation. We gotta fight for liberation. A life, a death, with your last breath. Get a life, get a death, but fuck, get out of the cage. Lockdown nation, undercover of COVID. Forced vaccination, undercover of COVID. The system dictates, undercover of COVID. A police state, undercover of COVID.